everyone. My name is Helen Margaret Nasser, and I am joined today by Professor Jason Leggett, and we're going to be going over some things that we find to be particularly important, and we hope that you will too. Presently, what's going on in our country, the deliberate racial hatred, is really intolerable, unacceptable, and sadly, it's not new. A lot of times when things like this happen, we react. But now, because it's something that's happened too much and too often, it's not enough to just simply react. So instead, we have to be proactive. We have to say enough is enough once and for all. We have to be protective. We have to speak up, especially if we're in a position of privilege, because often the vulnerable don't have this luxury. And finally, we have to be progressive. We have to change the way that we do the things that we're doing and the way that we're used to thinking. It's going to be difficult. Not all of us are always equipped for change. Not all of us are comfortable with change. But in the long run, to help elevate our whole community, we have to elevate everyone. And a little bit discomfort is going to be okay.
So one thing that we were thinking about as we were preparing for this particular presentation is how to tie this into work that we've done together now for almost 10 years. And that work is involved in law and identity, and how to kind of get students to think about how they can use their own voice, how they can develop their political skills, and how they can work with others to advocate on behalf of issues that are important to them. So in my class this semester, students are looking at various injustices, and specifically in one of my classes, we're looking at the Black Lives Matters movement, and thinking about how we can use knowledge from the past, from previous generations, in order to advocate for social change through the law. And so one of the readings that the students are doing is based in a James Baldwin quote, "The fire this time." And what the author here was looking at is what's the relationship between kind of how people see the movement and how people see law. And so in this excerpt I'm showing you here is just at the conclusion, the author was wanting the reader to understand that young people are the people who really got the movement started in the civil rights movement. And so there's a lot of that you're seeing now today, if you're watching the news or if you're participating in social media or if you're participating in the protests themselves. So one thing we wanted to kind of just reiterate here is that in order to get involved, it might seem like you have to do a lot, but really, it's just making that first choice. And that's something that we've been working with students for a while. And what we're going to talk about today is some of the opportunities that you can kind of just start to get into that process if you haven't done already. And if you have already gotten involved, please do reach out to us and we can help you link up with other students.
Yeah, and what I find important is, you may have seen this quote before, but I'll read it again. I think it's always very poignant. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. So there is a sense of urgency here, and it is dire. It is a matter of life and death for many of us. And, we can't stand to be complacent. This is something that is urgent. And when we're talking to our students, understand that this isn't something that someone's going to change for you. I like to tell students and remind students the time is now, and the people, it's us. So we have to find and feel compelled to make a change and make a difference here. So one of the most immediate, and I'll even say for many of us, the easiest way that we can contribute to making a change is by voting. Democracy is only as good as the number of voices that are represented. So if you are not satisfied with the way things are going, one way to voice that is by voting. So if you're not registered to vote, you can do so before October 9th in order to participate in this year's 2020 November elections. You can do that via the DMV website, and that's completely electronic. You can also access it via your CUNY First account. There you will need to print it out and also send it in the mail. So it's important to know that you're prepared to do that.
And I might just advocate on behalf of an event that we did last semester and in previous semesters with undocumented students, where if you are not a citizen and you're not eligible to vote, one of the things that you can think about is how you can voice your concerns and how you can participate in other ways. And then also, if you haven't registered to vote but you're able to, you could be voting on behalf of somebody who's not able to vote. So it's just another way of thinking about it for those of you who are still on the fence about voting.
It's also, a lot of us have concerns about COVID-19 and showing up to polling sites. So it is important that in New York State, you can request an absentee ballot in order to vote on November 3rd. So make sure you look into that process. You'll have to request it well in advance, receive it back in the mail, and send it back in a timely manner as well to make sure that your vote is counted. Otherwise, please be mindful of COVID-19 regulations and procedures. When you do show up in person to vote, make sure you're wearing a mask and keep a 6 feet distance between you and the other attendees at the polling site. We have a lot of important dates to think of during this election cycle. The first is coming up soon on September 17th. That's Constitution Day. I always remind students when they think about the Constitution, yes, it's a very old document. Yes, it's something we learned about in high school that we had to memorize random facts and that we've probably since forgotten about. But it's important to remember that the Constitution was framed by a bunch of white men, and it didn't always include women, immigrants, Black people. So how have we evolved? How has our country progressed? I always ask students to also remember the preamble, the first paragraph of the Constitution that says, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." So those I always find to be very powerful. Again, as I mentioned, at the time of that document being written, we the people was an exclusive bunch. So since we've evolved to be a little bit more inclusive, are we inclusive enough still? Who's missing from we the people today? And the other question is, in order to form a more perfect union. So the founding fathers recognized that this is aspirational. It was an experiment to create this country, and it wasn't perfect, and it's still not perfect. So what's missing now to make it perfect? What do we need? What do we need to change? You need to reflect on that, and you need to show that in your voting patterns. What do you want to see? Hold your elected officials accountable. This is how we can communicate with them, but it's not the only way that we can voice our concerns to our elected officials and improve our democracy. On September 22nd, we have National Voter Registration Day. So again, as we've been mentioning, it's super important to register to vote. Encourage your friends, encourage your family in New York, out of New York, everybody that's eligible. And again, be mindful of those who don't have that ability to vote, because who is in office impacts their lives very critically. So you can be voting for someone who cannot. In order to vote on November 3rd, the last day to register is October 9th, so make sure you're well in advance of that. And then in New York State, in addition to having an absentee ballot, which is now one way to vote, you can also vote early. So this is a second way to vote. So you can vote as early as October 24th, leading up to Election Day. And on the website, you can find out which locations are offering early voting. It's not always the same polling location that you would show up to on Election Day. So it's important that you have a plan, you do your homework, so you know where you're showing up and what to do. And then finally, on November 3rd, that's the big day, Election Day. So it's important that you know you've got 3 ways to vote. You can vote by mail through an absentee ballot. You can do an early voting by showing up as, in October through November, or you can show up on Election Day on November 3rd. So we want you to be organized. We want you to have a plan, know how you're going to vote, so that way you make sure that you don't miss this important election.
KCC Votes.
And there's our plug for KCC Votes. Yes. So the Student Union and Intercultural Center has made it its mission to empower our students and really help them believe that the time is now and the people is you. So through the events that we do, we really try and show you in different ways, different speakers who are going to help compel you to get involved and empower you to get involved. So the first one coming up is Karlas Quinces. So this is celebrating the 15-year-old birthday in Mexican culture. And this girl is turning 15 on November 3rd, and all she wants is for all of her friends and all of her family to register to vote. So this is a theater production that normally would be doing this performance in person, but they've adapted this important message to be done virtually via Zoom. So I encourage you to participate if you're able to, but even just to vote. And that's largely what tomorrow will be about. So we hope to see many of you there if you haven't registered yet.
And from what I understand, there's only a few spots left, right? So what do they do if they miss this performance?
You can connect with me, and then we'll be able to have a follow-up conversation about what's going on. I don't think they'll be able to do another performance, and I'm not sure if we're recording it, but if it's recorded, you'll find it online. If not, we can have a follow-up conversation about some of the themes that came up.
Excellent.
On September 22nd, which is National Voter Registration Day, obviously the Student Union and Intercultural Center will be doing a big push with a lot of our friends and colleagues on campus and students to get you registered. But we'll also be having a special presentation from the All In Democracy Challenge about demystifying the vote. So a lot of times, unfortunately, many people are skeptical about the impact of their vote. Why does their vote matter? So these two great speakers are going to be there to help demystify the vote and really break it down so that when it comes time to vote, you know how much your vote matters and you've got a plan to put your vote into place. Also on September 22nd at 2 p.m., we're going to be having a conversation with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. So this is important. He represents Brooklyn and a section of Queens. And he is going to have a nice dialogue with our students about how his journey into politics came into shape, what are the issues he cares about, and how he can ask for young people to get involved with his initiatives and that feedback. What does he need from you in order to make some of his initiatives move? And what can you ask of him to help make your lives and your communities a little bit better? So this is how government works. Your elected officials should be accessible to you and should be listening to you. So this is a mechanism that we want you to feel comfortable doing, to speak to elected officials and don't hold them up, so far away. They're in your neighborhood, they're in your communities, and they're affecting change right there for you in New York. And then on October 1st, again, in keeping in line with the message that you can make a difference and you should make a difference and you're ready to make a difference, we have speakers coming from Generation Vote, Gen Vote, which is a progressive advocacy movement that empowers youth to be agents of change in local electoral politics. So these are a group of students in college who decided that they could make a difference. They started an organization, and guess what? They're making a difference. So they're not going to keep all that power to themselves. They want you to be part of it as well. So this presentation is really going to help compel you and hopefully motivate you and inspire you to understand how you can make a change, how you can make a difference. We're not saying that this work is easy, but what we're saying is don't wait for someone to do it for you. You're very capable to do it. And we're not saying you have to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of organizations that are doing this important work. If there's an issue that you're passionate about or an issue that you care about, connect with us and we'll be more than happy to help you find organizations that you can join and participate in so that way you can start gaining in that momentum. So this is how you can contact us. Feel free to email us. Like I said, if you're interested about a particular issue, if you'd like more information about the events that I had mentioned and how to connect, especially with Zoom, we'll also be putting a lot of the links that you saw in this presentation in the comment section and the info section on YouTube, so you can take a look at that. But we really hope to hear from you, and we really hope that you'll feel compelled and empowered and inspired to make a change.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.